Hello and welcome to your piano lesson online. I am Dr. Gabriel Ruiz-Bernal and we are on part 2 of working on the Prelude number 1 from the Well-Tempered Clavier by Johann Sebastian Bach. This is the Prelude in C major. So last lesson we talked about the advantage of learning a piece, not just by learning the notes, but learning how it's built, learning the chords and learning the chord progressions, and how you're going to be able to learn it quickly, memorize it quickly, and retain it quickly. So then when you need to recall this piece in the future, you're not going to have to practice as much because you know how it's built rather than having to relearn all those notes. So in this part 2 of the lesson, we are going to do the chord analysis. For that, I would recommend that you go to this link below and pick up the materials. You can download them and then follow with me with the same score. And we will be working on the same platform. And you will be able to actually play the piece with the markings that tells you what chord progressions you are going through. Okay? So with that, let's go ahead and let's get started. So the piece is going to go through different chord progressions, and we are going to isolate each one of them so the work doesn't become enormous, so we have it segmented in different sections. The first one is going to be okay? So your first chord is a C major chord, followed by a D minor chord with a 7th, followed by a G chord with a 7th that returns back to C major. And this forms a 1, 2, 5, 1. A 2, 5, 1 is a very common chord progression because it first moves the chord, then creates a tension, and then it resolves back in where you started in the beginning. So now we're going to go to the next one. The next chord progression starts like this. And this one could be considered as a much longer progression, but we are going to take it in smaller chunks so you can actually digest them and understand them on smaller parts. So this one that we just did is going to be what we consider 6-2-5-1. Let me go in detail. The first chord that you have here is an A minor chord, followed by a D7 chord, in which the 7th is in the bottom, followed by a G chord, and followed by a C chord. But this is not the same chord, the same C chord that we had in the beginning that brought you home. Notice that this C chord has a major 7 and it is in the bottom. Notice the effect. Notice how this chord is not settled. This chord is uncomfortable, is wobbly, is trying to go somewhere else. So it is, and notice also that the previous chord, the G, doesn't have a 7. So this is not creating a like that. This with a 7 and without any distortion is completely clean. That would be more of a cadence of an ending, but in this case the G chord is clean and the C chord has the major 7 that wants to continue. So there is still motion in here. So after this progression, which is a 6-2-5-1, but it's a 6-2-5-1 where the 5-1 is a soft 5-1. It's not a hard 5-1 that tells you, okay, we're back home. So when you continue, the next chord progression is going to be this one. here you have another 251 in a different key. It's now a 251 in G. So it's 251 in the 5th degree. That's how we would explain it. But now let's work on it. We have an A minor with a 7, a D with a 7, and a G that's clean. It's a very clean G major chord. There are no 7s in it, which means that it has arrived to this temporary home, which is G major. So then here we have this 251. Okay, so now we move to the next chord progression. This chord progression that we are going to see now is far more unstable. It creates a lot more tension because it's going to use chords that involve diminished chords inside them. So here is your first chord. All right, so here we can see that the B flat, the E, the G, and the C sharp, when you put them together, or they create a diminished chord. So here, when you have a diminished chord, you can see it as such, but you're going to have to also see it as what is that diminished chord doing? What is the function of that diminished chord? So we're going to get to that. So right now, we have this analyzed individually, isolated as a G7 diminished or a G diminished 7. And then the next chord is a D minor. The following chord is a D also. It's also a diminished chord. And the following one is a C major chord. So what we're witnessing here is tension, resolution, tension, resolution. So look how it happens. And now we're going to see them as chords, as block chords, so you can see the difference. So here comes the interesting part. This G diminished chord, if you just look at it as a G diminished, but you need to find the function of it, you can see what's coming next. When you see that this resolves in a D minor chord, then now the function of this diminished chord is far more interesting because it becomes the diminished chord that is embedded, it becomes an A7 flat 9. Let me explain this. We have a C sharp, an E, a G, and a B flat, correct? Well, look at the function of these. If we had an imaginary A, if we had an A in the bottom as the bass, then the C sharp would be a 3rd, the E would be the 5th, the G would be the 7th, and the B flat would be the flat 9. In that case, the chord would sound like this. And this would resolve in D minor. So now imagine that we just take the A out of the equation. And now I'm going to put in the bass. Okay? So now let's look at the following chord. The following chord is an F diminished, that type of chord. All right, so when you look at this chord isolated, because it's a diminished chord, you could have 4 different resolutions. So let's look where it's going, and it's going to C major. Okay, so then if the most logical resolution from G major, the most logical preceding chord would be a G with a third, there's the B, a fifth, there's the D, a seventh, there's the F, and a flat 9, there's the A flat. And here you have your D diminished chord with an imaginary bass, there's the G, and then hear it, how it resolves in C major. Now take the G out, and then you just have this. And that's how you have the chord progression. Tension, resolution, tension, resolution. Okay? So let's play it one more time. Diminished, D minor. Diminished, C major. Okay? Let's go to the next one. So your next chord progression is going to start with this. So what key do you think this is going to be? This chord progression is going to be in C. And we are going to start with, what is this? This is an F major with a major 7. And the major 7 is in the bottom. This makes the chord, just like we saw it before, very unstable. Then, followed by a D minor 7, which is moving, followed by a G7 that is desperately requesting a resolution. And here's the resolution. See? So listen to it. Okay? Why is this also important? Because obviously when you are playing the piece, you're going to reflect these tension resolutions that are happening. You are going to play the moving, the tension, and then you are going to relax the music when it arrives back home. And that's how the piece gets life. It's not just a sewing machine just going boom, 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 boom with the same rhythm. It has a curve and it has a shape that you are doing by identifying the resolutions, the tensions, and then giving them shape. Okay? So let's go to the next one. So now we have another chord progression that's going to be really, really long. So this new chord progression is going to start on the second page on measure number 20. And look what it starts with. C7 followed by F major 7 followed by F sharp diminished followed by, this is a very tough chord. Look at this. A flat diminished, and then after those four chords that create such a tension, very strong tension, it's going to then start building up from very soft, gradually until escalating until it reaches the climax. See how it does it. So let's go back to where we started. C7, This is a chord that is in transit. It resolves in F major, but notice it has the major 7, so it's not really back in a home, in a temporary home of F major. It's moving along. Diminished, tension, linked with another diminished, more tension, and then we start an escalating with a G7, with a clean C major, and then this is a G7 with a suspended fourth that has this beautiful dissonance that is going to lead us to the next chord. You see it? The C morphs into this B, and then here kicks in a dissonance with a double resolution. The E flat and the F sharp are going to want to go here. And the F sharp. This is the highest climax of the piece. Now listen how it gets there. I'm going to start on measure 20. See how it built up all the way to that C major chord. One thing that Bach did here also that's pretty interesting, he kept the pedal tone on the bass with G. If you have not heard that term of pedal tone before, it's a note that is kept in the bass, even though the chord progressions on top of it are changing from one chord to another one. The bass is kept in the same place, and that gives, it has many functions, but one of them is that it gives an undercurrent. It's almost like you are walking on a carpet. You are walking and you are working on different colors, but always on the same underlying carpet. Also, notice that that pedal tone is a G, which is the dominant, which is the chord that eventually is going to give us the huge tension to resolve back in C major. So once we have this pedal tone, we go from here, G7, to C, to G7 suspended fourth, to G7, and then the diminished chord, still with the tone on the bass. And then finally, we arrive to C major. But notice that we arrive to C major, and the bass is not C, it's G, because the piece has not ended yet. We still have more to go. So after that, we're still with the pedal tone, back into a G7 suspended fourth. That, I'll talk about the function of that, goes into a G7. See how this is now going to resolve? Now the bass is C, but we have a seventh. So now this C, that could have been the end of the piece, is now a dominant 7 that wants to go somewhere else. Where does it want to go? To F. And then it's going to resolve with a G7, still pedal note with a C, and finally it will end up in C. See how sophisticated a piece that is oftentimes learned in the first years of piano, like perhaps in the third, fourth year of piano, has so much meaning. And many students might not realize of all the content that is packed in this piece because they learn the piece by just learning the notes, but they don't take the time to see what's going on with the chords. So let's do the last section. We are now on measure 30th. And in this one, which is a G7 with suspended fourth, has actually a function of 2 in a 2-5-1 in C major. So this could be very much like a D minor chord, like this. That will go to a G7, that will end up in a C. So in this case, the pedal tone that is a G is what is anchoring us into preparing the resolution. Here goes the G7, and then finally, now we are in C by the C7, so we go into F, and then the final cadence, G7, and then the final C chord. So the next assignment for you is going to be to analyze this piece as you have it in front of you, learn the notes. For the first assignment, you had to learn it as chords. Now you're going to go ahead and play it as notes. Normal, with every note distributed in time, like it says in the score. But I want you, as you're looking at the score, reading the notes, I want you to actually say the chord you're going through. So if we are going on the first page, like this, C, D minor. If you can say 7, say 7. But if it's too much to say, just say D minor. G7, C, A minor, D major, or just D, G, C, but remember that it has a major 7. Oops, sorry. A minor. So recite, say every chord you are going through, because that's going to help you learn the piece with the labeling of the chords. All right? So that's the assignment for this second lesson today. Third lesson, we are going to learn to actually practice this piece. We are going to learn about the hand motion, how to make it flow, how to create the phrases, how to go crescendo, decrescendo, how to give shape to the piece. So when you are playing it, you are transmitting all these that we are talking about, all these tensions, resolutions, all this traveling that the piece does. We want to make sure that you are reflecting that in your playing. Okay? We also want you to play this piece in a very relaxed way and with a lot of control. So there's no tension in your wrists, so your hands are relaxed, and so you have control, and you can have also leading tones, because we want to have little melodies going from place to place. And whenever we want to have an inner note that is leading one chord into the next, we want to bring it up also. There will be some times when we want the bass that is marking the 2-5-1 chord progression. We want the bass to be very clear where it's going, so it's leading the listener to the place we want to go. Okay? Well, thank you for being here with this lesson, and I will see you on part 3. Thank you.